Hello, my name is Wyatt Bright, and I will be presenting on natural selection. The main proponent of natural selection was Charles Darwin, though many others were having similar ideas as Darwin around the same time, such as Charles Lyell, Thomas Malthus, and Alfred Wallace. Darwin went on a voyage aboard the HMS Beagle, which set off in December 1831. It was on this voyage, set to survey the coasts of South America for Great Britain to retain its trading competition, that Darwin made his discoveries of natural selection. During his voyage, Darwin collected over 1,500 specimens preserved in spirits, and a catalog of nearly 4,000 bones, skins, and dried specimens. The most important discoveries came 3 years into the voyage, when the Beagle landed in the Galapagos Islands, located just off the western coast of South America. Here, Darwin collected many specimens of birds, which were later identified as 14 unique species of finch native to the many dispersed islands. Darwin found that the different species of finches had developed because of the different forms of food found on the islands. On islands where heavy nuts were abundant, the finches had big, strong beaks used to break the seeds. And on islands where insects were most prevalent, the finches had longer, sleek beaks needed to reach and catch the insects. Darwin had his idea of natural selection and evolution, developed by the early 1840s, but delayed publishing his findings for many reasons. These include dealing with chronic illnesses, concern about the reaction by his peers in the field. He believed he did not have enough raw data to support, and was finally quelled after receiving a letter from Alfred Wallace enclosed with a paper that outlined a theory of evolution very similar to Darwin's own theories. Darwin finally published his work on the origin of species by means of natural selection, or the preservation of favored races in the struggle for life, in November of 1859. This next paper looks at the processes by which the genetic coding of natural selection occurs, and attempts to propose an understanding for questions that Darwin could not answer nearly 150 years ago. The recombination of genetic code which occurs during meiosis of sex cells. This paper looks at how bacteria are able to pass on the favorable mutations for survival. This paper attempts to answer the question of why sex and recombination are so widespread through understanding the extent of genetic basis of fitness variation. Recombination is the mixing of genetic information that exists on DNA in the sex gametes. This happens typically during meiosis, but cannot happen naturally in asexual creatures such as bacteria. To combat this, the researcher artificially entered new genetic material into the bacteria so that recombination could occur. The research found that rates at which the genetic mutations occurred between generations was significant enough that there is no compelling explanation for recombination. That just through the recombination of DNA alone could create enough favorable mutations for survival and that sex plays no part in natural selection. In conclusion, we learned that Charles Darwin was the first person to suggest a theory of natural selection, though he was not the only one thinking about it. He made his discoveries on board the HMS Beagle on the Galapagos Islands. He then published his findings in 1859 after delaying for over 15 years. And finally, that sex plays no part in natural selection, but instead, the importance is on genetic recombination. Thank you.